everyone. Welcome to Glossy's Beauty Debrief here on LinkedIn. If you have been joining us weekly, you know that we're doing these every other week. And so glad to see everyone tuning in. Let people sort of come in here. I'm Lexi Lebsack, West Coast correspondent here at Glossy, and I'm joined with Tatiana Pyle, managing editor of Glossy, Emily Jensen, our senior reporter, and Courtney Marabella, our social media and audience manager. Welcome, everyone. All right. So as everyone in beauty and digital marketing knows, this has been a very trend-driven summer. And so for today's beauty debrief, we're going to really shine some light on a few examples of how brands and retailers have embraced some of the biggest and most wide-reaching social media trends. Now, there are a lot to go through, but we're going to focus on three of the big ones from our point of view. And this really includes Brat Girl Summer, the very demure trend that we're seeing right now really going wild. And then we're also going to dig into the coconut tree trend, which probably has a more eloquent name, but that's sort of what I've been calling it. But it's a kind of a new type of trend, because this one really came from Vice President and presidential candidate Kamala Harris, which is super interesting. But we only have 30 minutes, so let's go ahead and dive in. I will say that these trends, in my opinion at least, and what I'll be sharing today, is that they sort of build on each other. And so I really want to start with Brat Girl Summer, which got going in June, pretty early in the summer. And that's the one I'm covering today. So I'm going to start with a little bit of background. So Brat Girl Summer was obviously very big this summer, but I spoke to analysts that told me that the roots of the Brat Girl Summer trend have really been growing for the past few years. So we saw this in trends like the Feral Girl Summer and Rat Girl Summer before they really became Brat Girl Summer. And while these trends are a little bit different, I would say the hallmark is that they really just reject perfectionism, the kind of perfectionism that we see on social media a lot and has been very big in social media presences for millennials over the past decade. But with Gen Z, they really are rejecting this idea of perfectionism. And these new ideals that they have are a little fun, a little messy, a little wild, and they're really perfectly aligned with Charli XCX's breakthrough album, Brat. The star's 360 music videos celebrated it girls that personified this, like Julia Fox, model Gabriette, actress Rachel Senote, and really a who's who of really cool internet female faces. I spoke to Mia Jacobs, a youth strategist at WGSN, which is like a trend forecasting analytics sort of company. And she really put it perfectly when she said that this Brat album has resonated with youth audiences on a mass scale because it aligns with their current views around anti-perfectionism and toxic positivity, instead embracing a full range of emotions. It also taps into the return of rave culture and hedonistic pursuits, which we have been tracking since the pandemic. So they've been really watching this. And when the trend sort of broke, it really went wide. According to Dash Hudson, a social media management platform, Brat Summer content, and it saw about 40 million engagements across Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter X between June 7th, when Charli's album dropped, and 2 months later on August 7th. So I will say, before we get into some of the brands that really won this, I thought Brat Girl Summer would stick around for months. Curious what Emily, Tatiana, Courtney, curious what you guys thought, but I really thought that Brat Girl Summer was sort of here to stay. I felt it was this perfect sort of storm of sort of like what was happening in culture. But then something happened that, in my opinion, kind of killed the trend. And that is when Vice President Kamala Harris announced her candidacy for president last month. The internet sort of decided that she was Brat. A flood of slime green memes and Brat iconography sort of flooded the internet. And then it all came to a head when Charli XCX endorsed Harris on Twitter. She took to the platform and said, "Kamala is Brat." That received more than 50 million views. Now, when you compare that 50 million views to the 40 million engagements that happened around Brat Girl Summer across all of the platforms, I think we really see the sort of end of this trend and sort of how, at least it took it to a new place. We had all the different news outlets creating, explaining explainers about what Brat was. And so many brands across categories adding this slime green color from the album to their branding and using the term Brat. And I don't really think that, I guess I was sort of surprised that more beauty brands didn't join in. But
I agree with you, Alexia. I'm actually very surprised that I didn't see lime green on every single brand's TikTok or Instagram pages this summer. And I do think that once it became kind of like a political chess piece, it kind of killed the momentum of Brat. And at the same time, when she endorsed VP Harris, is around the same time that the demure trend kind of began to pick up. So I'm sure that also played into part of the reasons why it kind of lost steam.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly sort of what I think. Like, as I was going through these, I'm like, this is such like a shift from like Brat, which is like loud and messy and partying, and to demure, which is such a change. But we did still see a lot of brands embracing this. Not as many as we thought, like we said, but we do see, I do have some examples here, a bit like a case study of brands that successfully leaned into Brat. So I'm done rambling and I'll get to that. So, okay, a couple good examples are Half Magic. So that is the makeup line started by Donna Davy, the key makeup artist from Euphoria. And she had kind of a two-prong approach to this. Number one was a landing page. So if you Google Brat Girl Summer makeup, it comes up because she created a Brat Girl Summer landing page. And then she editorialized a ton of green products. They didn't make anything new, though, which I think is a really interesting call out. They just simply found all of the Brat Girl colors that sort of worked with the trend. And then they created this landing page. And then Donnie took to her page on social media and she created a ton of educational content, how to get that green eye, how to do the smudgy makeup. And then another example that I thought was really smart was how Estee Lauder company MAC had also editorialized some products. So they had one palette called the Connected Color eyeshadow palette, and it had this really gorgeous slime green color. They actually released it last year, but because it got so popular on TikTok with people embracing the trend, they re-merchandised the palette to be displayed prominently up at the top of their e-com site, which I thought was really, really smart. And they did this right when Brat was trending. And then the last example I have here, I feel like Chanel almost got a little bit lucky with this one because we know that Chanel works on their products way far in advance. They're not coming out with things even under a year. Like, they're really putting things into production for a long time. And for their 2024 makeup collection launch, they had an image of Ambassador Lily Rose Depp in the collection's only lime green shade. So for the collection, they have two green products, a metallic green lacquer, which I don't think is very Brat. It's more golden green. And then they also have a shimmery green eye pencil called Dream Leaf, which is a nice color green, and definitely like on the bolder side. And so even though they didn't call this out, they led with the green color, which I thought was really interesting because it's almost like a little like, if you know, you know nod.
Where it's interesting, as you mentioned, like the lead times for a beauty company to like make a product for this trending moment, it's kind of almost impossible. But were there any other brands who created products like for Brat, either like purposefully or even just accidentally, like Chanel?
Yeah, definitely. I spoke to the Estee Lauder West Coast VP of Global Brand Development, Jill Tomadil, and she told me that she spotted this trend quite a while ago, sort of bubbling up, and she basically got on the phone and was like, we need to absolutely create this. She was sort of hounding the product development team, saying we need this citrus green eyeshadow. They immediately started pulling it for Smashbox, and they were able to launch a product right around I think they launched at the very end of July or the beginning of August, but they launched a palette that had this really beautiful color of green. They called it slime green. And it was really, really pretty. It was in the Always On Mood Board Shadow Palette. And then it had neutrals, it had the slime green color, and then they went online and they editorialized it both on the platform for Smashbox as well as across social media, doing a ton of really cool tutorials on how to get Brat Girl Summer eyes. And within that, the social media content, they called out Brat Girl Summer very clearly for the fans. And then I will also say that Ismea French was a bit ahead of the curve. She's Charlie XCX's makeup artist, and she was actually in the 360 makeup video as well. And her line, Ismea Beauty, which was used for the 360 makeup for the 360 video, she has published several green shadow tutorials on her and her brand's TikTok channels in the past few months with a product that was released last year. But again, she was ahead of the trend, so I think she kind of like knew, and she had a couple green shades in there, so sort of connected. But I think those are sort of the best examples of how brands sort of took on the Brat Girl trend. But I'm really curious to hear a little bit more. Tatiana, you're covering the coconut tree trend next, which again probably has a better name. But again, like we were saying, it kind of got it. I don't know. I'm curious what you think, Tatiana, but I feel like maybe it got a little bit of its legs from the Brat Girl summer content. But you tell us, what did you find?
Yeah, I think it is called the coconut tree trend. We're going to just stick with that for now, because as I was doing some research, I couldn't find anything else. But yeah, I think it all kind of collided around the same time. So when President Biden dropped out of the race, VP Harris, announced that she was running, and then shortly thereafter, Biden officially gave Kamala Harris his endorsement. Like all of those things kind of like created this recipe or this cocktail of virality for the coconut tree trend. So it initially actually came from a May 2023 speech that she gave at the White House during an event that was advancing opportunities for Hispanic Americans. And during that speech, she just anecdotally talked about why, young people especially should think of themselves, should think of themselves how they exist in a community rather than isolated. And just for full context, the full quote is, "You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you." So I think for me, like knowing how TikTok kind of works and social media works, the memification of everything, I think one of the reasons why this particular clip really gained steam and grew legs is because it is just the perfect audio clip. It's maybe 10 seconds long, but you can use it for so many different circumstances and for so many different contexts. And on TikTok, one of the biggest trends are video formats is people just using audio bites and creating funny videos to accompany it. So I think, again, like similar to, I wrote a story last week about Kamala Harris and her silk press, and literally that just came from a previous interview that she did. But that one little bite gained steam, and like now a year later, now that she's running for president, everyone's like digging into her past, of course, looking at past interviews, and any soundbite that just resonates with a particular community is going to blow up. And for young people, they love social media, they love memes, they love funny audio bites, and I think that's probably the reason why this particular moment really has become a coconut trend, I guess. And then also what I found to be another interesting aspect is that it has become kind of like a political symbol of sorts. So when she announced that she was running, her team launched a Twitter page, and the bio on the Twitter page says, if I'm not mistaken, I think it says something about, let me find it actually, excuse me. It says providing context. So it's just a subtle nod to this viral moment. And again, this is just referencing that like her team is very much so tapped into the culture, chronically online. I'm pretty sure she's hired a few young people. And then some of the interesting stats that I found based off this meme. So when the meme became viral, or when the trend blew up again around July, there was a 973% increase in positive sentiment around Harris-related content. That audio clip alone has already seen 574 million TikTok views. And the Coconut Mall Harris mashup had a higher increase in view rate than the recent Cupcake remix trends. So it's really interesting to see how popular one little soundbite has become. It's really become a life of its own. But I think, again, like, because it's very memeable and because people have made subtle nods to it, I think that's why it has become the thing that it is now.
Wow, that went so wide.
Yeah.
I'm curious if, like, obviously I saw some brands sort of leaning into this, and I saw so many memes and so much content around this. But I wonder, like, were there any brands that like did it really well, or sort of like, capitalized on the moment well? I feel like with Black Girl Summer and with Demure, the very Demure trend, I feel like those are maybe a little easier for a brand to latch onto or retail to latch onto. This one's political, so I feel like you're also kind of like maybe planting your flag for a candidate. But what do you think? Do you think that it was like risky, or who did it well? Just curious.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So I think the reason why this one is a bit different than the Very Demure and Black Girl Summer is because there is a political component to it. So a lot of brands are choosing to stay away from it. No one's outright, using the audio clip. No one's outright posting coconut emoji. I think because it does signify, hey, if I do this, I'm potentially, saying that I am, or implying that I am supporting a candidate. So I think a lot of brands have steered clear. However, what I did find interesting is that during the DNC, which happened earlier this month, the first night, Kamala Harris made a surprise appearance, and she was wearing a tan brown suit from Chloe, which ironically is called the Coconut Brown. Now, Chloe did come out and say that this was a complete coincidence, but it's hard not to, it's hard not to assume that this was very intentional. But I do think that moving forward, there probably won't be, unless she does become the president. I don't foresee many brands really dipping their toe into the coconut tree for now.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny with the Chloe suit. I feel like that's an Easter egg for us. I feel like there's no way that that's random.
I totally agree. Like, there's just no way that is a coincidence. I think just to be on the safe side, again, like when November comes, she doesn't win the presidency, I do think that it's just more so like safeguarding themselves from any potential backlash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Wow, so interesting. Okay, that's also a really great case study in how trends take off and when to sort of get involved. Mm-hmm. Emily, let's move on to the last one on our list, the demure trend. This one is having such a moment. I feel like when it took off, every single post from me with demure, it almost hit me too hard, and I was like, I can't with this. But Emily, what did you find when you were looking into this one?
Yeah, we're still kind of in this one a little bit. It's the most recent of the three we're talking about. And I don't know how your guys' algorithms work, but for me, I found with the demure trend and sometimes other TikTok trends, like I was seeing first on my feed, like the reverberations and like callbacks to it, like people in captions or comments saying like very demure or very cutesy to each other or using the audio. And it took me a while to like find the original context for it, or I guess for my For You page to like deliver it to me. Like I actually just saw other people kind of referencing it before I saw the original video. And the original video was posted on August 5th. It comes from TikTok creator Jules LeBron. And it's just like a simple clip of her in her car. And she's saying in this kind of tongue-in-cheek way, like, see how I do my makeup for work. Very demure, very mindful. And she has this very particular cadence. Obviously, it goes a bit further than that I'm sure everybody has heard a million times by now. And it was this very kind of ironic, pseudo advice that she's giving. And kind of, I think, as you were saying, Lexi, it dovetailed nicely with like the brat girl summer trend, where brat girl is all about like hedonism. Very demure is the opposite of that. So I think people kind of latched onto it in that way, and it just like blew up. The time since Jules posted it, the video now has 48 million views, and that figure is probably out of date since I checked this morning. She now has over 2 million followers on TikTok. I don't know how many she had previously to the video kind of blowing up. I saw it just in the past couple of days, like increase from like 1.8, 1.9 to like 2.1 million. So I think she's still growing in that way. And very quickly after the trend took off, Jules has now done like events with Synergy, the kombucha brand out in LA. She's come to New York with Patrick Ta, the makeup brand for the Patrick Ta Foundation launch. She's done sponsored posts with K18, the hair brand, Verizon, Lyft, like all kinds of companies. And she even appeared recently on Jimmy Kimmel in a segment with RuPaul, where she kind of explained a bit more about the trend. She said the phrase was inspired by the trauma of working a retail job. And then, you know, other creators and even celebrities like J-Lo have like referenced the audio. Of course, you know, as we usually tend to see, lots of brands kind of co-opting the lingo a bit as well. But Jules herself has been really involved, it seems, in a lot of like these brand deals. You know, one thing that happens with social media is when you put something out into the world, like, or, you know, on TikTok or Instagram, it doesn't necessarily belong to you. You don't necessarily make money off of something that goes viral, even if you created it. But in this case, it seems that Jules really has financially benefited from it. Jules is a Black Puerto Rican trans woman who lives in Chicago, and she's shared with her followers since, you know, this trend kind of blew up, that the money she's gained from this very demure trend has allowed her to fund her transition. She's even helped friends and loved ones get on their feet as well. That said, there is another kind of twist to this story now, that a man in Washington named Jefferson Bates is trying to trademark the phrase very demure, very mindful, which if he were to succeed in that, that could prevent Jules from monetizing the phrase, at least within the state of Washington. So things are still unfolding. I'm still seeing it pop up all over my feed, even just with creators talking about, you know, things beyond like makeup and fashion, which is what Jules was initially talking about. I see people using to talk about like feng shui or like mental health kind of issues as well. It's very versatile.
Oh, how interesting. I can't believe that someone's trying to trademark it. Like how did that person not realize that they were going to get horrible press and like become basically a pariah of the internet for trying to like beat this content creator into like trademarking something like that. That's so funny. And kind of sad. But you know what I was thinking when you were talking, Emily, is that she does specifically call out the color green. Like, this feels very much like a cultural response to Black Girl Summer. But even in one of the quotes that I hear all the time, it's like, I don't wear a green cut crease to work. Like, maybe that's a funny call out, because like, when did green eye makeup trend before this summer?
It's kind of like a 2016 makeup style she's referencing, though, like the cut crease. So I don't know. Maybe
that's very true.
Who knows?
Yeah. Wow.
You know, I was going to say, one thing that I find interesting about the very demure, mindful trend, it kind of feels very reminiscent of like the Ellen DeGeneres era, where like if something went viral on YouTube, they would be on the talk, like the person who created the video will be on the talk show following. And I think it's probably going to change and shift viral moments. You know, the creators behind these viral moments are now kind of becoming more authoritative in like how that content is being used, who's using it. And I think it's a really interesting, again, I think it's going to be an interesting shift in content creation culture, or virality culture.
Yeah, like the fact that it can jump from, like, sometimes internet culture is a bit of a bubble, and it's like really only for people who are like very online, as we were saying. But yeah, like when you jump from this kind of TikTok niche to this really mainstream platform like Jimmy Kimmel or Ellen back in the day, it's like now this whole new audience is suddenly aware of it, even if they're not on TikTok or, you know, Twitter or Instagram.
Yep, absolutely.
So interesting. Emily, do you think that demure has sort of hit its peak already?
I don't know. I was trying to like deduce that. Like, how do we decide when something is at its peak? Because you know, even as you were kind of at the top, it's like it's already feels very oversaturated. And like when brands themselves start to use the language, like either in a comment or like in a post, it instantly goes from being this like very kind of funny, witty kind of phrase to like being a bit cringe, which kind of can kill the vibes of it a little bit. I don't know if it's at a peak. I do think it's interesting, like as Tatiana was saying, that Jules and even other content creators in the past can move to a more like mainstream TV platform outside of social media, which might give it more legs. It does seem like people also like really respond well to Jules herself, and she does offer an interesting perspective. Like in a recent TikTok, she talked about like all the money she's making off of this and what she plans to do with it. And there's a lot to be said for influencers sometimes promoting this like overconsumption, like unattainable lifestyle. But she mentioned, I thought when I got to this place, or if I got to this place, I would want to buy all the Louis Vuitton bags and what have you. But actually, I want to use this to help out my friends, help out my grandma, like even just like buy myself a new wig. Like that's a very different perspective that maybe we haven't heard from influencers before, and maybe it would give people more reason to want to keep participating in it as well.
That's nice. That's sort of this story has kind of like a heartwarming finish, because like I feel like she's so likable, and then this like a trademark person is coming out of nowhere and is like very much like the bad guy in this. I think I saw an explainer on CBS yesterday about this, so I'm like, okay, we're at the next level of
I know,
like they're explaining to people what this is, and they all it was primarily based around a trademark dispute. And I was like, oh my gosh. But curious, Emily, with the beauty brands that have sort of jumped on board with this. So I know you mentioned that she's done events with Synergy Kombucha, Patrick Ta Makeup, and sponsored posts with K18. And then, of course, the Jimmy Kimmel segment. What kind of content was this? Was it sort of like her talking about it, or like, doing the soundbite, or what can you tell us about like what that content looked like?
Yeah, it's like some of it's sort of experiential. Like when she went to the Patrick Ta event, they had this like new foundation that the brand was launching, like a liquid foundation, and I think they invited other influencers to this event where you could get like the foundation engraved with something, probably your name, but hers was engraved with like the word demure, which is very sweet. With like K18, it was more of your traditional kind of sponsored posts, and of course she like integrates like the demure phrase into like, see all my hair is like healthy and shiny, like very demure kind of thing. And I think with the beauty things, it seems to work well in the sense that, prior to her going viral, like she talked a lot about beauty already. Like that was very much core to like her platform. And like she, talked about like get ready with me videos, shouted out lots of brands that she used already. So it seems to sit very like naturally within her content. Compare like the other, like the Verizon or kombucha stuff, I don't know so much how that sits with her audience, but the beauty ones, at least she does say to her audience, like, I'm endorsing products that I personally like already use and own. Like the K18 one, she specifically said, and this like the bottle she's holding up of their like leave-in hair mask, she's like, I already own this. This wasn't sent to me. I already like use this in my collection.
That's nice. So she's kind of like in the circuit now. I saw a couple of pieces of content from that Patrick Ta event in LA. I don't know if it's the same one or the LA version, but that's cool for her. She's kind of like in the circuit now. And for the brands that really jumped on this and got her to create content or got her to be in an event or something like that, I feel like that's very smart.
Yeah, and she said recently that in like a recent post, so I assume this is new, that she applied to join the Sephora squad, which she had applied in previous years and been rejected. I can't imagine Sephora would want to reject her now, but we'll see what comes of that.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. Awesome. Well, this was so great. I feel like we have some really great lessons around how beauty brands, wellness brands can really like either jump on a trend quickly, respond to a trend, kind of have a nod to a trend without accepting, or really embrace the content creator behind a big trend before everyone else does. Thank you both, Emily and Tatiana, for sharing your insights. Thank you all for listening. We are here every other week, and we have great content around all of these topics on Glossy's website. So please give us a look and a follow and all that good stuff, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks.